We are now live and recording.
Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to the continuation of the meeting of the Board of Trustees of the California State Bar. Can we have a roll call, please?
Barahona. Barahona not present. Buenaventura.
Present.
Cisneros.
Present.
Good not present. Gore.
Present.
Grande. Grande not present. Harrison.
Present.
Huser. Present. Jargello. Jargello not present. Sowell.
Present.
Stevens.
Present.
Tony.
Present.
Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the approval of annual financial statement audit pursuant to Business and Professions Code 6145A, including Legal Services Trust Fund Report under Business and Professions Section 6222, and presentation of audit results by independent auditors. This item is being presented by Coco Zhang from the Office of Finance. Coco?
I don't see Coco on in either room. Yes.
We can do 6.5 first then. We can do 6.5 and try to get Coco on the line because Duan's already on.
Okay. All right. Actually, we'll switch in order. Next on the agenda is the approval of the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission audit pursuant to Business and Professions Code 6210.5, Subdivision G, and presentation of audit results by independent auditors. This item is being presented by Dawn Nguyen from the Office of Access and Inclusion. Dawn?
Good morning, trustees, and I apologize for my background. The Zoom link is not working this morning for me. Again, my name is Dawn Nguyen, and I am a program director in the Office of Access and Inclusion. In this role, I serve as the lead staff coordinator for the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission, and I oversee the State Bar's legal aid grant making. MGO is unable to join us today for the presentation, but their PowerPoint slides are included in your meeting packet. I want to start with some brief context on this audit requirement itself, walk you through the scope of the procedures that were performed, and then share with you the results. So Business and Professions Code Section 6210.5, Subdivision G, requires that the State Bar develop a program to audit a representative sample of grant awards each year. This requirement was added in 2023 as part of a broader amendments codifying the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission's policymaking authority. The audit is designed to verify that grant awards are made and consistent with statute, rules, and other governing authorities. So to meet this requirement, the State Bar engaged with MGO, who you all know is our auditor, to perform agreed upon procedures on a representative sample of 2025 grant awards. So for those of you that are not familiar, agreed upon procedures engagements are a specific type of review in which an independent practitioner performs procedures that are mutually agreed upon by the engaging party and the practitioner, and then the reports factual findings without expressing an overall opinion or conclusion. So MGO's review covered 3 categories of grant awards. The first category was IOLTA and Equal Access Fund formula grants, and for those, MGO reviewed a random selection of 10% of applications. They were able to verify timely submission, applicant eligibility as a qualified legal services project or support center, and whether there were required financial audits that needed to be submitted. MGO also independently recalculated award allocations and verified that grant recommendations were presented to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission for final determination. The second category that was reviewed was the pro bono allocation associated with the IOLTA and Equal Access Fund grants. And for these, MGO verified that grantees met eligibility guidelines requiring recruitment of pro bono attorneys and the use of private attorneys as the principal means of providing legal services, And in your packet, you'll see that when they pulled the random selection, there are actually no grantees that were given a pro bono allocation. And then for the third category that was reviewed was competitive grant programs. And there were 10 competitive grant programs in 2025, and they range from homelessness prevention, care court grants to consumer debt, bank grants, partnerships, and law school summer fellowships. And for each of these, MGO reviewed a sample of proposals to confirm eligibility. They verified that scoring criteria were specified in the RFP and applied consistently. And they also confirmed that award recommendations were presented for final approval to the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission. So I'm very pleased to report that MGO found no exceptions to across any of the procedures performed, and the State Bar has therefore determined that the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission grant awards made in 2025 were consistent with statute, rules, and governing authorities. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the trustees?
No, but for the record, before you go to questions, we do have Trustee Giorgello in the room now.
Thank you. Trustee Sowell.
Duan, thanks for the presentation. I don't necessarily have anything related to the audit itself, but I do have just a question about the interplay of the pro bono grant awards through the Legal Services Trust Fund and the requirement, and somebody help me here, that that now private law firms have to report on all their pro bono activities. And I just wonder, do we have a sense of how the amount of those pro bono hours that might be attributed to or interact with legal aid entities throughout the state?
That's a really great question. And we don't have the numbers right now to present to you, but I will say that the mandatory pro bono hours will help our programs do better reporting. So as part of this pro bono allocation, I'm getting maybe a little bit too much in the weeds, but for your understanding, so for programs that are principally doing pro bono, they do get an additional amount as part of their IELTS and EF awards. And so having law firms be required to report it will help them then accurately report it to the programs in order to then prove that they are eligible for this pro bono allocation. So in that way, I think it will help programs in terms of presenting the case that they are qualified for a pro bono allocation. But I think beyond then, it's also really helpful to have those numbers in place so that we, on the back end, we'll be able to run trends and see from law firms, or if they're doing pro bono in-house, some of the trends around what practice areas, where they are doing the pro bono, so that we can help really enhance the delivery of pro bono across the state.
Thanks for that response, Duan. Do you have a sense of when we might be able to start doing that analysis?
So there is going to be a presentation that's going to come before the board in September. Our office is working with the Office of Research and Statistics right now. Once that information comes through from this current kind of licensing fee, we will have data to share with you and some analysis, and then some trend, some reports and some policy recommendations perhaps related to that we could do more to kind of enhance that based on the kind of the data. But in September is when we plan to bring that to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, should we display the motion? And I'll need a motion in a second.
As chair of the audit committee, I move this item, approval.
I'll second. I think it's Trustee Harrison, I think.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Chair Tony, second by Trustee Harrison. Vote, please.
Barahona, not present. Buenaventura,
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore,
Aye.
Grande, not present. Harrison,
Aye.
Huser,
Aye.
Jargello, Jargello,
Aye.
Sowell,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Cisneros.
Aye.
With 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Okay, great. We'll go back to the approval of annual financial statement audit pursuant to Business and Professions Code, item 6.4, including legal services trust fund and professions code, and presentation of the audit results, and joined by Coco Zhang.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm sorry for being late. Have some computer issue earlier. So first, let me share my PowerPoint.
Trustee Barrett wanna join?
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, hi everyone. So for this agenda, as MGO could not be able to attend today, so I will be presenting solo today. Regarding the 2025 annual financial statement and 2 other audit reports. So I will provide some backgrounds on the audit reports, and we'll go over some key financial highlights, and then I will go over the audit results. So the state bar is required to submit 3 financial reports to the state legislature by May 31st. Those are all having the reporting period by calendar year from January 1st to December 31st. And then we are in the final stage for the financial statement audit. And so we are bringing the agenda to the board for review and approval to issue the financial reports and further submit to the state legislature by the deadline. So the 3 financial report includes the annual financial statement, including the required no disclosure and supplementary schedule. Also the statement of expenditures of mandatory fee, as well as the legal service trust fund report that finance coordinated with the Office of Assets and Inclusion on that. So MGO prepared the attachment D, the report to the board, that's part of the agenda for review as well. So I will go over some highlights from the financial statements. At the end of 25, total asset and deferred outflow decreased by 54 million, mostly due to the significant increase of the IOTA trust of revenue of distribution in 2025 that decreased the cash and investment balances significantly. So on the other side, total liability and deferred inflow decreased by about 1 million overall, as you can see, mainly due to the decreases in the net OPED liability and net pension liability, but those were based on the actuarial variation. So on the revenue side, operating revenue decreased by 7 million, primarily associated with the decrease in trust account revenue due to lower interest rates during 2025. We also recognized less pass-through grant revenue in 2025 due to less pass-through grant distributed in 25 as well. However, we do have an offset. The licensing fee and donation revenue increased by 21 million in 25, which helped to offset the decreases in other revenue categories. On the other hand, operating expenses increased by 147 million, as you can see in the table, mainly associated with the grants expense or IOTA grant distribution in 25. So on the non-operating side, non-operating revenue decreased by $2 million due to less investment earning for the State Bar in 25. So at the end of the 2025, the ending net position decreased to $278 million. And as explained earlier, mainly due to the large significant IOTA revenue distribution. So this concludes my financial highlights. So for the other results, I'm happy to report that for all three financial reports, we will be getting the unmodified opinion, which is the clean opinion, the highest assurance level that we will be getting from the auditors. So there are no exceptions, finding or recommendation from the auditor for the 2025 financial audits. So there was also no 2025 single audit as we have less than $1 million federal expenditures incurred in 2025. So this concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any question that you might have.
Thank you very much, Coco. Are there any questions? If not, should we display the motion?
I am going to move this item, and I just want to thank the finance staff, Coco Zen, the controller, Araceli Montoya Chico, the CFO, and really all the State Bar employees that are involved in making sure that we have very accountable finances. This is a very clean audit. It is, and that should not go unnoted. So I'm happy to make this motion.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by, motion by Vice Chair Tony, seconded by Trustee Stevens. Vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore?
Aye.
Grande, not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser?
Aye.
Jargello?
Aye.
Sewell?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Cisneros?
Aye.
With 10 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, the board will move to closed session pursuant to Business and Professions Code, Section 602, 6.7C3, Government Code, Section 11126, Subdivisions E2A, C18, and E2BI. Closed session item 2.4 pertains to the confidential cybersecurity audit and assessment regarding matters posing a threat or potential threat of criminal or terrorist activity against the State Bar's personnel, property, and equipment, including electronic data. Before the board may convene in closed session on this basis, the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act requires a motion and a vote of 2/3 of the members present that discussion of this item in open session would compromise or impede the safety and security of the State Bar's operations. Here, the State Bar's confidential cybersecurity audit and assessment includes detailed information on the State Bar's technology systems, data systems, and business operations that, if disclosed, could compromise the security of the State Bar's electronic systems, resulting in security breaches, disruption of services, and/or the unauthorized disclosure of personnel, licensee, and applicant information. So based on that, do I hear a motion and a second to enter into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126, Subdivision C18, for closed session item 2.4?
So moved.
I have a motion by Trustee Jargello, second by Trustee Gore. Vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore?
Aye.
Grande, not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser?
Aye.
Giorgello,
Aye.
Sewell,
Aye.
Stevens,
Aye. Excuse me, aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Cisneros.
Aye.
With 10 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. So with that, we will move into closed session. I'll ask our virtual folks to move to that link. We will be setting off our meeting to the public, and we will reconvene. We're estimating 3.5 hours.
Sorry, hour and a half.
Hour and a half. It's quite a difference. So we'll see you back in an hour and a half thereabouts. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to change the slide. Okay. Welcome back. This is the Board of Trustees meeting. We are returning from closed session into open session. There are no reportable items coming out of the closed session. With that, we will take up our next item. Next on the agenda is the update and adoption of additional legislative priorities and adoption of positions on pending legislation. And we're joined by Donna Hershkowitz. Thank you again.
Good morning. This is the last time, or near the last time, you'll be hearing you need to hear from me over this 2-day period. This past February, the board adopted several legislative priorities that addressed issues involving public and consumer protection, state bar regulation, and protection of contact information for at-risk state bar staff. Since you last met in February, the annual state bar fee bill was introduced. That bill, Assembly Bill number 2784, includes 5 of the adopted legislative priorities, in addition to maintaining the licensing fee at the current rate. The bill also changes from December 1 to December 31 the deadline for a licensee to declare that they are going inactive for the following year if they wish to pay the inactive licensee fee. The board's adopted legislative priorities that are included in Assembly Bill 2784 are described on page 2 of the staff report. The additional 5 adopted legislative priorities, or 5 of the additional adopted legislative priorities, are in varying stages of discussion or drafting, and we hope to be able to move many, if not all of them, forward this legislative session. The final legislative priority relating to amendments to the certification, the voluntary certification program for alternative dispute resolution providers is undergoing subsequent discussions. If any changes are made to that program, that will be done outside of the fee bill. AB 2784 was approved by the Assembly on the floor this past Monday by a vote of 73-0 and is now moved over to the Senate. This staff report that I'm presenting to you now asks you to do 2 things. 1, approve a support position on AB 2784, and 2, adopt 2 additional legislative priorities. As to the first of those 2 asks regarding the support position, I do want to clarify that in addition to the items that I just described that are currently in Assembly Bill 2784, the bill does include some language repealing the requirement for the state bar to collect membership dues for the California Lawyers Associations, and otherwise for the state bar to provide other specified assistance to the California Lawyers Association. The bill also revises the formula for distributing insurance and non-insurance affinity program revenues, distributing more to California change lawyers, and ending the distribution of those revenues to the California Lawyers Association. The staff recommendation is that the board take no position on those provisions of AB 2784 while supporting the remaining provisions. My second ask of you is to adopt 2 additional legislative priorities that we'll propose to legislative staff, both of which are described on pages 3 and 4 of the staff report. Briefly stated, the first of those 2 legislative priorities would clarify the authority of the board and the Committee of Bar Examiners to discuss confidential licensee for the board and applicant for CBE information in closed session. You'll see in the staff report that as it relates to the applicant information, this clarification would better align Business and Professions Code 6026.7, which describes what can be discussed in closed session, with Business and Professions Code 6060.25, which describes the confidential nature of admissions information. With regard to the licensee information, The proposal seeks to close a loophole to ensure that the board as a whole can meet in closed session when necessary to discuss discipline matters related to a specific licensee or other matters that might affect a licensee's privacy. The amendment seeks to allow the board, as a non-advisory body, the same ability to hear these matters in closed session as an advisory body currently has under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. The second legislative proposal that I have for your consideration, also described on page 4 of the staff report, would finalize the legislatively mandated deunification of the state bar that occurred through statute effective January 1, 2018, by adding a provision clearly reflecting or further memorializing in statute the state bar structure as a regulatory state agency. The remainder of the staff report highlights other pending legislation of interest. I just want to talk about one of those pieces of legislation, and I'll leave the rest to your reading of the materials. That piece that I want to highlight is Senate Bill 1129 by Senator Caballero relating to community justice workers. Senate Bill 1129 directs the state bar to create a working group to examine the results of community justice worker models that are in place in other jurisdictions to provide legal services to low-income individuals. The working group created pursuant to this legislation would be required to deliver a report on their evaluation of these other models by January 1, 2029. The staff report details why we are not recommending a position on SB 1129 at this time. At a very high level, the proponents of this bill also submitted a petition to the Supreme Court to add a rule of court establishing a statewide community justice worker program. I believe, unsure of the likelihood of success with that petition, they concurrently sought this legislation to ensure that there's continued momentum on this important topic. The State Bar did file a response to that petition identifying 5 possible responses that the Supreme Court could adopt, 2 of which actually include the creation of a committee to review the matter. Staff does believe that taking a position on SB 1129 now, while the Supreme Court action is still pending, would be inappropriate, and so that is why we are not recommending an action at this time. And with that, I conclude my presentation and open it up for questions.
Any questions for Donna? Trustee Solo.
Don, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. You're saying we should support the fee bill, but there are 2 provisions of the fee bill that you're saying we shouldn't take a position.
Yeah. So, and we've. I was going to say we've done this in the past. I'm not sure if I've done this in the past at the State Bar, if I've done this in the past in a prior legislative advocacy role. But it's not uncommon to take a position of State Bar, supports AB 2784 with the exception of sections, whatever their numbers are, right, 1, 2, and 3, on which the State Bar takes no position.
I don't remember us doing that, but just trying to think about it in the context of that's not a supportive amended position.
It's not, and Laura and I have spoken with the California Lawyers Association, and they are aware that we don't think it's appropriate for the bar to take a position on those items. So this would not be a surprise to them. It is not. It is not intended to and will not signal any intention with regard to those provisions or any intention about our feelings toward the California Lawyers Association.
Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion being displayed. We need a motion in a second.
A second.
I didn't hear a motion.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Trustee Barahona.
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Barahona, second by Trustee Gore. Vote, please.
Barahona.
Aye.
Buenaventura.
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore.
Aye.
Grande, not present. Harrison.
Aye.
User.
Aye.
Jargello.
Aye.
Soel.
Aye.
Stevens.
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
Cisneros.
Aye.
With 10 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Donna. Next is item 6.10, approval of the Quarter 1 financial statements report. Welcome, Araceli.
Thank you, thank you. Let's see, I do have a presentation for this item. Is the presentation,
Are you letting?
is it coming up? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Is showing on yours? We don't know why the screens went dark. Michelle is displaying it. I'm not. Oh.
I think Devin.
Devin's displaying it, okay. Oh, you can see it because Devin has shared it. Okay. Yeah.
Yay, there it is. Let's see.
I think you're gonna have to tell Devin.
So just click next. Well, the clicker's not working, so maybe. Oh, it's on. Oh, there it is. Just needed some IT hands. There we go. Okay, good. Yes, still morning, Board of Trustees. This is my presentation for the results of the Quarter 1 financial statements. I did present it yesterday to the Finance Committee, so some of the Board Trustees have already heard this. So first, I'll start with our revenue results. Overall, our total operating revenue bar wide is $5.3 million above budget. And the composition of that variance are the funds that you see listed here. And I'll start first with the general fund. The general fund, as you can see, is pretty much on target. It's just about $100,000 above our revenue budget. So overall, it is on target. But I did want to highlight that within the general fund, it's our mandatory licensing fees. And those are actually below budget, as fewer attorneys, again, did not pay, I should say, by the billing deadline. So in turn, what you will see is that there was an increase in assessed late and non-compliance fees. Those fees are not going to hit until Q2. So the next time I present my results for Q2, you will see, once again, I think this will be the third year in a row almost, certainly the same as 2025, you will see a significant increase in late and non-compliance fees because we did have a significant number of attorneys who did not pay by the billing deadline. Moving on to the Equal Access Fund, this one's slightly above budget too on the revenue by about $100,000. And this is just because there was more grant activity. So all of the grants are mostly passed through except for a small portion that we get to keep as a grant administrative cost reimbursement. So there was just a little bit more staff activity than we had budgeted in Q1 for, for EAF. The next grant with a significant fluctuation is the grants fund. there's multiple grants within the grants fund, but particularly the driver of this variance is the Care Corps grant disbursements. We had more grantees sign their grant agreements ahead of schedule, so we were able to make those disbursements. You will see a significant variance on the next line on the expenses because it is mostly passed through. Legal Services Trust Fund is well above budget as of Q1. It's about just under 2.5 million above budget on the revenue. And it's really all IOLTA earnings. It is a trend that we see pretty much quarter over quarter where the actual balances and the interest rates are higher than what was budgeted. So the trust accounts are billions of dollars, so a little bit variance in actuals will really drive a significant variance throughout the year. And just as a reminder, the Legal Services Trust Fund Commission sets the budget, and we just basically adopt what they approved. On the admission side, it's also above budget on the revenue side, which is a plus. It's about 1.3 million above budget, and that's due to the February and July bar exam. We had more applicants than we expected, so we were able to get more revenue from that. There is a little bit of moral character application, higher revenue than we expected, but we believe that's more of a timing difference that should resolve as the year goes on. Finally, other funds, this is above budget, and it's something we continue to see. There's a little bit higher donations in Q1 for the Greg Knoll Justice Gap Fund and the Cypre settlement donations that we do see year over year, that we have seen in the prior quarters, I should say. Moving on to the expenses, in total, our bar-wide expenses are about 105 million out of a budget of 104. So we are slightly over budget by 1.3 million bar-wide. However, the composition of that variance are the funds listed here. As you can see, the general fund is slightly below budget, just by about 200,000, and that's because we have just temporary savings in Q1 regarding repairs and maintenance. This is temporary, and we don't anticipate the savings to continue into the next quarter. And then a little bit of discipline cost reimbursements, we received more than we expected in Q1. Yeah, so that's the general fund. There aren't too many variances, but moving on to the next one, the grants fund, you heard me say it on the revenue side, we had more revenue disbursements from earlier grant disbursements we did. So this is the expense side. Now you see that there's also more grant expenditures related to Care Court, since we were able to disperse those grants to the grantees. The admissions, yes, the admissions fund is slightly above budget on the expense side by just under $500,000, so about 400,000. And that's because for the February bar exam, there was an increase in testing sites, and with an increase in testing sites, obviously there's higher electricity consumption. So those are the two factors that drove a little bit of overage on the admissions expenses for the quarter. And then finally, the client security is below budget on the expenses, and this is a trend we have continued to see. There's just been fewer claims payouts than we have budgeted, and we probably anticipate seeing that for the next few quarters as well. And the last slide I wanted to present, it's really just the net position or the surplus slash deficit where you see the negatives for each fund. So I will have this slide each quarter to try to hopefully paint a slightly clearer picture of where a fund stands at a given point in time. I want to call it specifically the general fund. I know it looks right now great because it looks like we have almost a $78 million surplus. And I just want to highlight that the general fund particularly, most of the revenue comes in Q1, so about 97-98%. So you won't see too much growth in revenue in the next 3 quarters, but the expenses, on the other hand, they're spent more ratably over the year. So you'll see the expenses increase, but the revenue stay more or less stagnant. So you'll see the deficit, or excuse me, the surplus kind of getting decreased over the quarters. The Legal Services Trust Fund, I know it looks really weird to be like, wow, it has almost a $24 million deficit, but it's just because we have, I should say, the Legal Service Trust Fund Commission has planned more grant disbursements in this year compared to the revenue that's being earned. But there's sufficient reserves in the Legal Services Trust Fund to be able to disperse more grants than the revenue that's coming in. So I just want to highlight that. Otherwise, this is the net position by fund.
and the end of my presentation. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Araceli. Any questions? Yes, Trustee Sowell.
No real questions, but just want to thank Araceli and her team for pulling this together for us, and particularly that last sort of page that goes through each one of the funds sort of individually. Araceli, if you would, though, would you just sort of comment on this trend that we're seeing in terms of just sort of late fees and what all that means? Because we did have a discussion of that in the Finance Committee yesterday.
Mm-hmm. And Erica, you can help me if you want to give more of the background of what happens. But I think this is, I want to say, the third year where we've had significant late fees. Last year, our mandatory fees actually fell below budget for the entire year, but what was able to bridge the gap were these late fees that, it's a blessing and it's kind of a double-edged sword. We have a lot of attorneys who are non-compliant, which is where the late fees come from. There's multiple requirements. I can't remember if it's six reporting requirements that attorneys have to comply with. There's a late fee assessed for each one that they don't submit by the deadline, which was March 30th. And if you don't pay your requirements by the deadline, it's a fee assessed for each one on top of obviously your licensing fees. I don't know if there's anything more you want to add, Erica, or something.
Necessarily, if you feel like it, but I think the one thing that Araceli said yesterday is that this could amount to another couple $1 million.
Yeah, so we
just in terms of the back of the envelope calculation in terms of additional revenue into the general fund just on late fees.
Yes,
and
last year I think it was close to 3.7 million that we earned in late fees. We budgeted about $2 million this year, hoping that more attorneys would be compliant, but based on the counts that we're seeing, I think I said about 5 million as an estimate.
Right. We tend to underestimate late fees because they are not a reliable source, nor should they be. I much prefer people are in compliance when they should be in compliance. So our budget usually keeps the number. I think we did 1.8 or 2 million this year estimate. We did not actually expect the amount that we're seeing. How much of that we collect is yet to be seen, but that's where Araceli is coming up with the around 5 million.
Yeah.
If I can just put a little more context real quick. So there's also another, there are new compliance obligations this year for lawyers that did not exist last year. The newest one is the civility requirement. And so that does include another late fee. So many people, as you are likely aware, don't comply with any of the obligations. And so they're assessed individual late fees for non-compliance with each obligation, with the exception of the pro bono reporting requirement, which is also a new requirement this year as well. The only thing I'll just add is there's the late fee penalty, which we're talking about today. What will be coming in the future as well is also the reinstatement fee that has been approved. So if you are a licensee and you are non-compliant, by July 1st, you are then placed on administrative inactive enrollment. Basically, your license is frozen and you cannot practice law. And then to get out of that and to become an active lawyer, again, there is an additional reinstatement fee. So there's the late fees plus a reinstatement fee.
And my comment to this, and so thank you for lifting it up, was that if it continues to trend up, is it showing a pattern of something? Yes, it's revenue to us, but also that means are folks having a harder time paying the fee? Is it disproportionately impacting one population or another? And so we as a committee will keep an eye on it, but if it, we're like, oh, now we're at $4 million a year, and we're at, that's not necessarily good. Right. And then it might probably, if you do want an audit or assessment, we may see some trends that we might want to address. But we'll keep an eye on it because it does kind of feel steady state right now. But it's a weird way to make money.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Trustee Tony?
I just have a suggestion on the presentation. On the revenue, the revenue looks like there's a lot of good news in that in each category, the actual amounts collected exceeded the budgeted amounts. Mm-hmm. That's what I read. And that's good, and that's why all those numbers are in black. If you look to the second one, the general fund, where we, I'm just trying to, oh, I see what this is. I had a hard time reading this. Okay, so I'm just trying to, our expenses in the general fund, which is the first bar, is less than the budget.
Correct.
I'm just suggesting that number should be black, because that's a good thing. See, red I always associate, I think most people do, with this is bad, this is negative, this is a red flag to watch. I think it's good when we spend less than budgeted. And then for instance, the total operating expenses, where when we add them all up, we spent more than was budgeted. I would think that I would want that number to be red. Like, let's keep an eye on that. So it's just a suggestion of how you do the presentation. I like it when we're spending less than budgeted. I like that. I think that's a plus, and it means we're in the black. And if we're spending more, then we're in the red.
Okay.
Just an idea.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of mathing here. So if you are taking revenues and subtracting expenses, you're going to subtract a positive. So you're doing just the opposite. So it needs to be shown as a red item, because you're doing revenue minus expenses from the budget to the actual, so that when it flows to the last page there where you have the consolidated, it works. If you flip that, it's going to do the opposite. Okay, never mind. So it's accounting, right? It's accounting. Yeah.
I'm not disputing the accounting rationale.
Use the visual.
I'm saying that, when I do this for my board members, I've always tried to simplify it, and sometimes simplification and messaging isn't the exact same as accounting. But you're right on accounting, of course.
Maybe I can flip just the colors.
Yeah,
But the negative would stay the negative, because
Yeah, exactly.
it is the negative.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I'm going to move the item.
I have a motion. Do we have a second? And can we post the motion on the screen, please?
Can you repeat who made the motion and second?
I have a motion. I'm waiting on a second.
Second.
I got a motion from Trustee Sowell and a second from Trustee Harrison. Vote, please.
Barahona? Barahona not present. Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good not present. Gore?
Aye.
Grande not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser?
Aye.
Jargello?
Aye.
Sowell?
Aye.
Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Cisneros?
Aye.
Barahona?
Aye.
With 10 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is a report of action taken by the Board Executive Committee approving specified contracts pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 6008.6. And we'll be hearing from Griselle.
Right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. 5 minutes till the afternoon. So again, I'll just share my screen so we can all look at the same report. And we have here 6.11 report to action. So this staff report is informational only. We're reporting back on the contracts that were approved during the Board Executive Committee meeting on March 25th, 2026. Are there any questions on this staff report?
Any questions from trustees? If there are none, this is a discussion item only. Oh, wait, no. It's an action item.
No, this is just a report back. I don't
That's what I
think,
thought.
do we need to take action on it? No.
This is a report back to the board. It's an
That's what I thought.
informational
Okay,
item.
great.
So, but Grisel can do the next two items.
Great.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Then Giselle will move on to 6.12.
Yes, so we have here 6.12. These are contracts for approval. So I will walk through the list. If you do have any questions along the way, please stop me and we can discuss as we go down the list. The first two items are split out because these are new contracts. We have item 1, Zendesk. These are requesting approval of a new contract for $127,440. It's to purchase the enterprise licenses that support our upcoming term from June 2026 through June 2027. Item 2 is also a new contract for Dell, requesting approval for $390,000. That's for the purchase of up to 200 Dell laptops that we need to replace all the older laptops. And now following the list to item 3 to 9, these are items requesting approvals of increases to existing contracts. So on the table here, we're showing the amount increase that we're asking for approval. But if we scroll down to the narrative, you'll also be able to see the aggregate or total spend that we have from that contract so far. So item 3 is Costco Fire Protection Contract requesting an increase of $33,991. This was the original project of the installation of the fire suppression system in the LA data center. And after a plan check correction received from the City of Los Angeles Fire Department, the vendor Costco Fire Protection submitted a change order to address those corrections. So this additional change of scope will address that part of the project. Item 4, London Noir PC, is for Special Deputy Trial Counsel Services, requesting an increase in the contract for $22,500 to cover additional services. Item 5, Robertson Schroeder LLP, increasing the contract by $50,000. This is for the continued representation for Specialized Bankruptcy Counsel. We have then for IT, item 6, Oracle. This is the requested amount of $2,192,807. This is to enter into a new 3-year base period with 2 option years at a fixed rate. IT had looked at multiple scenarios and choosing to go with the 5-year contract and rate resulted in about $88,000 in savings. And this purchase is for the Oracle Fusion Cloud SaaS Enterprise license. So that includes all our modules used in operations for finance, payroll, HR, and recruitment. Item 7, we have Microsoft Unified Support. This is approval for an increase of $175,274. This is for the next annual service period that's starting in June 2026 through June 2027. This is support services for the Microsoft products that we currently use. Item 8, California Department of Technology, CDT, we're requesting $388 for this contract. This is the final invoice for the service period that just ended from March 2025 through March 2026. These are the Microsoft Office 365 licenses. Usage is reviewed annually. And at the end of the year, there's usually a final adjustment. So the final invoice was short the 388 of what the board had previously approved. So this is why you see it here again. Item 9, Granicus is requesting approval for 53,320. This is for the upcoming annual subscription renewal period, also June 2026 through June 2027. Granicus provides the SaaS solution for the different meeting management tools that we use. So I will stop there. That's the list for this item. Are there any questions for any of the items we have here?
Any questions for Griselle? Yes, Trustee Stevens.
Just real quick, and you may not know the answer, but the laptops, and that is a 200 laptops, it caps out at 390, which is about $19.50 a laptop. So those suckers better have some giddy up, right? I mean, that better be a high-speed processor and some real gas to it. Do you happen to know?
I don't have the details of the actual models. That would be an IT question. I can follow up to confirm like what models are getting purchased. But yes, I think 180, they're categorizing them for general users, and then they have set aside 20 for power user units.
Yeah, and that may explain some of the cost. I would love to know that though, because you can buy a laptop for $500 now.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that is a takeaway.
Trustee Tony.
I have a question on item number 5. I absolutely understand, unfortunately, the specialization of bankruptcy law. I kind of forgot what case, like how the state bar is involved in a bankruptcy case. I forgot.
When, and I have to be very cautious not to get
Of
into
course.
it, but there are instances where individuals that have been assessed, disciplinary costs or CSF, et cetera, or are subject to certain disciplinary proceedings, then they may file in bankruptcy, and there are situations where we need to either suspend, our collections or disciplinary activities, and it's in that context that the bankruptcy representation comes up, and we do have an active bankruptcy case now.
Okay, without getting into the details, I understand that. It's fair to assume that the value of what is being considered exceeds what we're spending for legal representation.
Can you?
I think of bankruptcy as assets at stake, and I'm just giving a wild example. If the assets were $10,000 and we're spending $50,000, I'm like, maybe we shouldn't, let it go. But
we have to defend ourselves in there. It's not just about the recovery of funds. We actually have to have a defense in a litigation that has been initiated. So we have to respond to it. And because bankruptcy specialty questions are coming up,
Thank you.
yes, it's not a cost benefit assessment.
Thank you.
But we need to be able to defend the.
It's
the
a requirement.
law. Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, this is an action item. I want to display the motion, and we'll get a motion in a second.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Motion by Vice Chair Tony, second by Trustee Gore. Vote, please.
Farahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore? Grande, not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser? Huser? Huser, not present. Jargello?
No, I'm here. Sorry. Aye.
Jargello?
Aye.
Well? Okay, Soel not present. Stevens?
Aye.
Tony,
Aye.
Cisneros.
Aye.
With 9 ayes, 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 6.13, approval of specified admissions-related contracts pursuant to Business and Professions Code, Section 6008.6, and we continue with you, Griselle. Thank you.
Let me just share my screen. Six point 1.13. These are all contracts related to admissions. So again, I'll go through the list. If you do have any questions, feel free to jump in and we can address those. The first part of the agendas, items 1 through 14, are for contracts relating to site contracts of the bar exams. I won't go in detail for all of them. I know some of the names may look familiar. We're already contracting with them in the past. So item 1, we have Edlin Pasadena. This is for electrical. This is the only one for the upcoming July 2026 contract. Item 2 through 8 are for future exams in 2027. So all of these site contracts are either for the February or July exams. And scrolling down to the items 9 through 14, all of these are grouped for the 2028 exams. So you'll see facilities here again for February 2028 and July 2028. Also very familiar. These contracts would be the same that we were contract for the previous year. All the venues follow the same guidelines. They're chosen based on location, layout capacity, and experience. So I'll move down to item 15. This is for Apple One. Admissions requesting approval for 1.6 million to cover the proctors for the July 2026 exams. Next, item 16 is for Robert Happ. $300,000 for July proctors. They're used more of an on-demand short notice backup to Apple One. Item 17, Stat Delivery Services, requesting $50,000, $720,000. This is for the courier service of the July 2026 bar exam. Item 18, we have the National Conference of Bar Examiners, $619,920 for the upcoming July 2026 NBE books. Item 19, that's Exam Soft, requesting approval for $1,254,000 for the placing of a new contract. The vendor was selected through a recent RFP process. The details were discussed during the Committee of Bar Examiners Subcommittee meeting in April. And the amount reflects the estimated amounts to administer the February 2027, the July 2027, and February 2028 exams. So this cost should cover all three. And the final item is 20 Apple One. This is requesting an additional $21,595. This is to cover the final invoice for the February 2026 proctors. It's an increase from the previous board approval that we had. I will stop there and then I'll continue because there's other things to also talk about. Are there any questions on the current items here?
Any questions for Griselle? Why don't you continue, Griselle?
Perfect. All right, so I'll move on here, scrolling down to previous action. So here we just want to report back on 3 approved admission contracts where we did use that 30% unforeseen increase approved by the executive director and chair. So you'll see here the 3 different exams with the amounts. Most of them had to do with increase in parking amounts and some with some of the labor on the setup. So the final part is our table 2. So all the contracts that the new contracts 1 through 19 for the future exams. Admissions is also asking for the 30% approval in case we're in between board meetings. So this would delegate authority to executive director in consultation to the chair if it is needed, and we will report it again in the next board meeting. That concludes our list. Here you can see what the 30% would look like if it's used. Are there any questions in regards to this?
Any questions from trustees? Thank you, Rizal. Then we'll need a motion in a second, and we'll be displaying the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Stevens, second by trustee Harrison. Vote, please.
Sorry. Buenaventura.
Aye.
Good not present, Gore.
Aye.
Grande not present, Harrison.
Aye.
Huser.
Aye.
Giorgello.
Aye.
Sowell not present, Stevens.
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
Cisneros.
Aye.
With 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll take a short break to gather some lunch and then ask people to bring it back, and we'll continue with our agenda in a working lunch mode, starting around 12:30.
We are now live and recording.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to the Board of the California State Bar Board of Trustees. Next on our agenda is the proposed new State Bar Rule 6.92 regarding general procurement request to circulate for public comment. You'll be joined by Justin Ewart and Grisel Zendejas. Hey.
Are one short of a quorum right now?
We need it before we can vote.
Can we continue the presentation?
They could start on the presentation, but can we check in?
I'm not checking for
Are they in
trustee
the
Gore.
attendee pool by any chance?
Trustee Harrison. Trustee Harrison is not here. Okay. Harrison.
I'm here.
Thank you. Let's go.
Okay, so shall I start the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Item 6.14 requests authorization to circulate proposed new State Bar Rule 6.92 for a 45-day public comment period. Business and Professions Code 6008.6 requires the State Bar to establish an RFP procedure by rule. While the State Bar has had a long-standing formalized RFP process documented in our General Procurement Manual since at least 2010, and the California State Auditor confirmed back in 2013 that we are complying with the contracting requirements of the State Bar Act, there is currently no formal State Bar rule on the books. Proposed Rule 6.92 would close that gap by codifying our existing use of the General Procurement Manual and authorizing the Executive Director or their designee to approve future revisions consistent with applicable law. That is my short presentation on this item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Justin on this item?
I have one.
Vice Chair Tony.
Yes. What's the process by which these rules will be, we pass this today. What's the process by which these rules will be developed, and what will or can the role of the board or the audit committee be in developing them?
So, did you want to go ahead, Justin?
Well, we have. Are you talking about the formal process? Because we are ready to publish this for the 45-day comment period. We work with our communications team to get it out there and solicit feedback, and then we bring that feedback back in the July meeting to the Board of Trustees. But I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding the question.
I think, Mark, are you asking about the process for updates to the actual procurement manual?
Yes, I'm asking
Okay.
about the procurement manual.
So internally, we are working, multiple offices are actually working, finance, OGC, on updates and revisions to the procurement manual. And while that does not require board approval, we were going to bring it back, I think, at the September board meeting as an information item so that it is visible to the trustees.
What I'm interested in is basic principles, not all the details. So for instance, I think the board should have a role in determining things like when should a contract go out for bid? What are the we approve a lot of contracts, and I can't tell which ones have ever gone out to bid, how often they should go out to bid. I don't have a problem with multi-year contracts, but I do think based upon previous experience, we may want to have a limit to how long a contract is. 7 years may be too long for a contract, for instance. So I think there are board policies to provide guidelines, not all the details, but that's the level at which I'm asking for some sort of board participation and input, because there's some of these contracts that are just, we're just going to extend them. We approved it in 2017. We did one today. And we're just going to extend it. And, what I don't know is when is it appropriate to ask, well, instead of extending it, would 5 years be a good time to do an RFP and see what other vendors there are out there? Or maybe there's a reason not to do that, and there are exemptions to do that. That's the kind of stuff that I think is the purview of a board of directors.
I think we can discuss that as we do the updates and bring that back in September. I will say part of the whole process of revamping the procurement manual is better tying it to the state procurement manual, the one that is published by Department of General Services for use by the executive branch as well as the judicial branch contracting manual, because we don't fully belong to either agency, but we are trying to tie where we have the same provisions, we're citing those, and so we'll be able to provide updates there as well.
Great, and just hearing that, I like hearing that. That's very good news, that we are tying it to what other agencies do, and it's not we just reinvent the wheel. Thank you.
Any other questions? And this is a action item. We put up the motion, and I'll need a motion in a second.
I'll move the item.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Chair Tony, second by Trustee Barahona. Vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good not present. Gore?
Aye.
Grande not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser?
Aye.
Jargello?
Aye.
Sowell not present. Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Cisneros?
Aye.
With 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you. Next are proposed amendments to the State Bar rules regarding computing deadlines. Amended State Bar Rules 1.22 and 1.23. request for public comment presented by Mia Ellis. Hello, Mia, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Cisneros, members of the board. This is a request for board authorization to circulate for a 45-day the proposed amendments to State Bar Rules 1.22 and 1.23 regarding how deadlines are computed. The current State Bar Rule 1.23 outlines how to calculate deadlines when based on number of days, but does not expressly state that fixed date deadlines are extended when they fall on a weekend or a State Bar holiday. So this proposed rule change would clarify that if any deadline were to fall on a Saturday, Sunday, or a State Bar holiday, that deadline is extended to the next business day. It also provides State Bar Rule 1.22. It adds a definition for a business day, and that definition is that a day the State Bar is open for business, excluding weekends and State Bar holidays listed on the State Bar website. And again, this is a request to circulate for a 45-day public comment period. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Trustee Tony.
Yes. Mia, could you, I'm just curious, is there a difference between a State Bar holiday and a State of California holiday? I'm just wondering if we need more specificity than to say a state holiday.
No, it's my understanding that the holidays listed on the State Bar website are aligned with those in the state of California, unless
They're slightly different, actually. For example, State Bar holidays include Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Executive branch does not include Christmas Eve. Minor things like that.
Thank you. That's good enough explanation for me.
Any other questions? All right, another motion will be displayed. I need a motion and a second.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Trustee Stevens, second by Trustee Harrison. Vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good not present, Gore?
Aye.
Grande not present, Harrison?
Aye.
Huser?
Aye.
Giorgello?
Aye.
Soel not present, Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Cisneros?
Aye.
With 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Next are proposed amendments to State Bar rules regarding the procedure for voluntary resignations. Amended State Bar Rule 2.45. Request to circulate for public comment. Welcome, Steve Moed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This change would redelegate processing of voluntary resignations to the State Bar and would create operational efficiencies within the State Bar, primarily within State Bar Court, and potentially within the Supreme Court. As you see in the item, there are a large number of administrative steps, primarily, again, within State Bar Court, that could be eliminated if these voluntary resignations no longer have to go to the Supreme Court for processing. The other changes that were put into effect in 2009 with the adoption of this rule and with the changes to the declaration and the essentially application for voluntary resignation would still remain, including the requirement to declare under penalty of perjury that there are no criminal charges pending against the licensee and that they have not been convicted of a crime that is required to be reported to the state bar. Further, now that the state bar, and when I say now, I mean since 2009, when we did not have this authority, we do now have the authority to access subsequent arrest notifications and subsequent disposition notifications from the California Department of Justice. We are in the process of implementing a procedure change, irrespective of whatever happens with this rule change, that would require us to check those SAN, subsequent arrest notifications, and SDN, subsequent disposition notifications, to ensure that no one has one of those things that they should have reported but failed to report. And that if they do, that it has at least had a chance to be reviewed by the Office of Chief Trial Counsel before that voluntary resignation is executed. This is a request to send it out for public comment, and I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for Steve? And we are bringing up the motion. Need a motion and a second.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Giargello, second by Trustee Stevens. Vote, please.
Farahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good not present, Gore?
Aye.
Grande not present, Harrison? Harrison? Was that an aye?
Yes, that's an aye.
Thank you.
That's an aye.
Huser?
Aye.
Giargello?
Aye.
Soel not present, Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Cisneros?
Aye.
With 9 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Steve, stay with us. Next is the proposed new rule and amendments to the State Bar rules regarding acceptable methods of payment. New State Bar Rule 1.30, amended State Bar Rule 2.33 to return from public comment. Steve.
Thank you. This change would, the adoption of these two rules would permit State Bar staff to adopt a policy on acceptable methods of payment to the State Bar. The proposed policy would apply to, at this point, to legal specialist fees, law corporation limited liability partnership fees, and fees associated with the attorney annual renewal, including noncompliance and late fees, and as the Deputy Executive Director pointed out earlier, reinstatement fees, which are a separate fee. The policy would require electronic payments generally, unless otherwise exempted. I believe that there was some discussion during the last time this was before the board as to how many checks we receive, et cetera. So I'm bringing that back to the board now. In 2024, the State Bar received approximately 8,900 checks for licensing fee payments from individual licensees and 1,100 from firms and agencies. In 2025, the number decreased for individuals to 7,800 and increased slightly to 1,200 from agencies and firms. I don't have 2026 numbers yet from finance, but that's both the number of people utilizing the program and also gives you an idea of the amount of work involved with processing those paper checks. So that's the information from last time. In response to the public comments, I note that several of the public comments, one in particular, brought up Government Code Section 27005, talking about how government agencies may not be able to do ACH transfers, and that was cited as a justification for government agencies to not pay by ACH. I do want to point out that in my read of the statute, it does not appear to prevent ACH transactions. In fact, it authorizes electronic funds transfers, which an ACH is in fact an electronic funds transfer. I think the interpretation on the behalf of those government agencies is saying that they need to initiate the transfer as part of an ACH push which is talked about in the item, and I can go further here if you're interested, versus an ACH pull transaction. Regardless, we have created in the policy an exemption for government agencies to allow them to continue to pay by check. However, with the goal in mind of reducing the amount of time between the end of the renewal cycle and the time when we actually impose late fees or suspend people, if we're depending on which deadline we're talking about, the request is that those checks be postmarked 14 days prior to the deadline, which would allow us time to have those checks go through the mail and then give finance a period of time to process those checks so that we are everyone is reaching the finish line at about the same time, as it were. Some other public comments expressed concern about eliminating checks because, for example, the cost of electronic payments. There is no cost for ACH payments under our contract with our payment processors. There is for credit card payments, but not for ACH. So there is no additional cost. In fact, they're saving the money of it for stamp. As for security concerns, which was also raised, I do want to acknowledge this as valid, but I would also point out that ACH payments don't reveal any additional information that would otherwise not be revealed by sending a check. Right, the ACH transaction shows the routing number, the account number, the name, address, etc. All of that is also printed on a check. Now, I also acknowledge that the fact that this is being transmitted through electronic means may open people up or raise the concern that people's information would be opened up to greater exposure. But of course, we're all well aware of incidents of mail theft, check washing, identity theft based on information that was mailed, etc. So I don't know that it is a significantly greater risk, but I do acknowledge that is a risk with both mailed and electronic payments. I'm happy to go into the push versus pull in a little bit more detail if anyone's interested, but I can also save you that discussion if you feel comfortable with that. I would just add that there are protections on bank accounts that would prevent some pull ACH transactions. There's an ACH block that some banks offer that would prevent us from pulling the money from the account after the licensee initiates the transaction through our system. And of course, the licensees would need to deal with that. They would need to either remove that block or potentially have their bank have a different type of protection, namely an ACH filter, which would either allow them to safe list the state bar as a authorized transactor or to approve individual transactions as they are presented for payment. So this proposed rule change is returning from public comment, and staff recommend adoption.
Any questions for Steve? Trustee Tony.
Steve, would you repeat the number of checks currently being processed annually by the State Bar?
So 8,900 checks from individual licensees in 2024. That number dropped to 7,800 individual licensees in 2025. The number from firms and agencies in 2024 was 1,100 and increased slightly to 1,200 in 2025.
Okay. So 9,500 approximately. I'm just doing it in my head. I don't. Okay.
Yes.
Close enough. Okay. Here's what's interesting. That's a lot of checks.
Mm-hmm.
And insofar as there is a rationale to make a change in terms of requiring electronic payments, it's also 9,500 reasons not to do so, because that's a significant number. That represents to me a significant number of licensees and institutions that their preference is to pay by check. That's, I mean, clearly they're paying by check. And so I also note that there was significant opposition to this change in the public comments. It looked like a third of the people who bothered to respond opposed it. And so I think this is, I understand. Also, when I look at it, I'm just looking at the numbers in this report, staff report. It says that we can save $90,000. You know, $1 a check is what I count. And I just don't know that saving $1 a check, saving $90,000, $10, thank you. Thank you for the math. Okay, $10 a check, but $90,000. When we look at our budget, okay, $90,000 is a drop in the bucket, okay? It doesn't move the needle in terms of our financial challenges. I just don't think this is the right time to be making this change, and that we should honor the preferences of those who prefer to pay by check. And, you know, to me, $90,000 savings isn't enough to put customers through a lot of hassle. For some, you know, I do believe in customer service, and I think that making this change will represent an inconvenience to a large number of our customers.
Just to round out the landscape, Steve, or do you or someone know out of how many payments are those 9,000? How many non-check payments do we get per year? Another 9,000? 90,000? 900,000?
I'm sorry, are you saying out of the 9,000?
No. How many other types of payments? How many of those are there? What percentage is the 9,000 of all the payments? How many licensees are there?
That may be the better. So I don't know that we have those exact numbers because, as you know, many
ballpark.
law firms pay for all of their attorneys through one payment. But we have over 200,000 licensees, so who are, you know, paying in various ways. Many of those are lumped into one payment, like I just mentioned with a large law firm, medium-sized law firm, small law firm. But many also make individual payments. That gives you kind of a sense that we're probably talking tens of thousands, if not more, individual credit card payments.
And it's about 250,000 that make any sort of payment if you include inactive licensees as well, right? They also owe licensing fees unless they're over age 70, and so there's a number of.
I'm just trying to get a feel for the percentage of, to Mark's point.
Yeah.
What percentage of folks? Is this affecting 1% of folks doing business with the state bar, or 10%, or 50%?
So to that point, and unfortunately, first of all, I just want to say I'm not in finance, and neither personally nor with the state bar. And so some of these questions, I was looking to see if Araceli was still here to have a response to that, but to that question. But the reason that I'm here suggesting this, and one might say that the $90,000 savings to me is somewhat incidental. I'm not here proposing this as a cost-saving measure necessarily. I see that as an added bonus. I'm proposing it for wholly different reasons, which include the attempt to reduce the amount of time between the end of the renewal cycle and when we can impose late fees or suspensions, because we do that retroactively. Particularly in this case, the concern is the suspension. And what happens is that at the end of June 30th, we wait to see, we give finance a week to process all the payments, because they have to not only process the payments they've received, but wait an amount of time for anything that would have been postmarked by the due date to then process those, which means we end up on, for example, this year, I believe we're targeting July 9th to process the suspensions. those suspensions are effective July 1st, which means if somebody had looked at their license status on July 2nd and said, I am active, I can go to this trial, and I can do this trial, and then on July 9th, they're moved to inactive status based on their suspension, and that suspension is retroactive to July 1, they were not eligible to practice law at the time they were doing that trial. That has caused a huge problem for both public defenders, district attorneys, and other lawyers that need to have their license, and having that retroactive action is problematic. So that's the reason that I'm proposing this rule. And yes, I got this with the assistance of finance with the financial piece, but that's not the motivation for this change.
Can I just make a point of
Go ahead,
clarification? Them being placed on suspension retroactively effective till July 1, though, I just want to be very clear, because we've been talking about notice to licensees quite a bit in this meeting, is not without notice.
Yes.
They get several email notifications. They also are required to get written snail mail notifications of the fact that they're going to be suspended. So just as a point of clarity, because we've been talking a lot about licensee notification.
Yes, that's exactly right. And they do get those notices both electronically through email and for non-payment, both 60-day mailed and at this point at least a 30-day mailed, and then a 30-day notice for all of the other requirements for which they may be suspended or inactively enrolled. But nonetheless, if they go in on that day and say, can I go to court today? The answer may be yes, and a week later it was, no, you were suspended on that day.
I really appreciate that explanation. It goes a little further than what I read in the staff memo, and it gives me information I just didn't have before. Is the retroactive suspension a matter of statute, or is it a matter of state bar policy?
Great question. The Supreme Court order dictates that they be suspended effective July 1. And as a result, we generally follow that same date for all of the suspension/inactive enrollments. For other reporting requirements, we have the same effective date. And so that is the basis for that. I'll leave it there.
It's useful. I kind of wish that were explained as part of the rationale. I'm just saying it's another level that I haven't thought about before, because I don't understand stuff like that.
Yeah, no, and I apologize. I did include at least pieces of that in the earlier when we sent it out for public comment, but it's my mistake for not including that here, because you're absolutely right. It is relevant to that portion of the discussion and for a better understanding of it. And, we're in May now. That was, 6 months ago, and there's no way that anybody who's not dealing with this on a daily basis can hold on to that. So my apologies.
That's okay.
The one other thing that I would point out in regard to your concern about the individual licensees who still want to pay by check, we have about 1,000 licensees, a little less, that are 9.9 exempt, which means they are not required to pay via the online system, and they would still be able to pay by check. So that's if you're looking at licensees who may be inconvenienced, there's 1,000 right off the top there. If you're looking at other licensees who may be inconvenienced, but we're allowing for government entities to pay by check, those would come off of that 1,200 number as well.
That's useful. Thank you very much for the explanation.
Of course.
I'm sorry, I think you said it was 1,000 that have the right to pay by check still. What gets them there? Are there accommodations of sorts, or?
There is an exemption in California Rule of Court 9.9, which states that if somebody does not have internet access or an email address, then they can seek from the state bar permission to do things essentially on paper. We have about 1,000 of those, and so every year for the annual renewal, we send them all the paper, all the stuff they need to do on paper, along with a bill that says, send us back a check and send us this statement. and they do that.
So does that mean that that opportunity would still be available to other folks who may not have signed up for that yet, but now could, if those parameters apply to them, and be able to continue to pay by check?
If those parameters apply to them, yes. I think, I don't know this, but my assumption is that when the Supreme Court passed that rule in, let's say 2014, I don't know that that's right, that they were sort of assuming that that would be a slowly reducing set of a group of people, if you will.
see.
But to the extent that people, don't have internet access and don't have an email address, and they do meet those criteria, they absolutely can still join. I will say that I have people emailing me asking to be a 9.9 exempt person, which, as you can see, is ironic. But
Yes, very much so. I will just say, our office is in the business of accepting payments. We do still accept checks, but can testify that it is oftentimes very complicated. It ends up with folks being late who had every reason to believe they would not be late, or even checks lost. So it is understandable. I think the testimony I'm hearing about the difficulties makes sense to me, and we certainly experienced it similar. Any other questions, comments? Trustee Stevens.
Yeah, I noted in the materials that almost twice as many people supported the revision as disagreed with it. That was my math on the thing. But I did want to just make sure there is the government exemption in the written version.
There is. I'm not asking the board to adopt the policy, because frankly, I want to be able to amend it if, for example, we figure out that there is some other group that we need to exempt or something along those lines. I want to be able to do that quickly, nimbly, without coming back to the board. And so I'm not asking the board, I'm explicitly not asking the board to take any action on the policy itself. But yes, currently in the policy is an exemption for government agencies.
Yes.
And just to add to, so what we're basically talking about today is the annual renewal process with a few other things, as you can see in the draft policy that was prepared as part of these materials. We do have other sources of revenue and other ways in which people send us payments for different things, lawyer referral service, there's many other MCLE providers and so on and so forth. And so the reason that the rule is basically providing staff authority in this instance is because those are areas in which we are currently processing payments through a paper check format. At some time in the future, we may explore making that credit card and ACH in the same way we have for the annual renewal process, and we would like to do so. And just as Steve described, we don't want to have to bring that back to the board in every single instance, just because we think it's more effective to do it in a bit more nimble fashion.
Any other questions or comments? And this is also a motion. Why don't we display the motion and see if we have any actions?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Trustee Stevens, and I have a second by Trustee Gore. Vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore?
Aye.
Grande, not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser, not present. Jargello?
Aye.
Sowell, not present. Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Abstain.
Cisneros?
Aye.
With 7 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Next on the agenda is the request for retroactive approval of waivers of noncompliance, late fees, and proposed new state bar rule regarding discretion of executive director or designee to waive certain fees and extend specific deadlines, new state bar rule 1.26, return from public comment and request for approval. Thanks again, Steve.
If you'll put up with me for one more item, we'll get through this. This item does two things. The first is it grants, is that we recommend adoption of proposed new Rule 1.26, which would grant the executive director or their designee discretion to grant waivers or extensions where they determine that the waiver or extension is in the interest of justice and the conditions giving rise to the need for the extension or waiver are not caused by the recipient of the extension or the waiver. And also, with a separate resolution, retroactively approve waivers granted by staff. And I just want to be clear that those waivers were granted and previously granted generally follow the criteria set forth in the rule. As you know, over the last several cycles, I believe starting in April or May of last year, we have granted some waivers where the licensee has submitted a licensee's records and compliance inquiry form that's not been answered by our team. We felt this was necessary in the early years, for example, of CTAP, because it was new and many people had questions. We couldn't answer them all. Now, however, that program has matured, and we specifically made no changes to the CTAP reporting requirement from last year to this year. The number of questions has decreased significantly over that time frame. We've also really created many more help guides, embedded video help guides, FAQs, et cetera, to help people with their reporting, not just in CTAP, but in other reporting requirements as well, including the new ones that were mentioned earlier, pro bono and civility, et cetera. So we do have fewer questions. Ideally, we're going to get to a point where we're not going to be granting waivers based on the fact that somebody submitted a question to us that we weren't able to answer. In the old days, that wasn't a good cause for a waiver, and I hope to get back there, but we're not quite there yet. I will also say that I acknowledge that coming to you retroactively to approve these things is not the best practice, right? And so that's what this rule does, is it really allows the board to weigh in on what would be a reasonable criteria for waivers, and then give that discretion to staff to do without coming to the board each time. To respond to the public comment, there was some concern about having board members participate. Frankly, I would be happy to have board members participate in the discussions of them, but I'm not frankly sure that that's a good use of board member time. While we do have broad categories into which some situations fall that would probably qualify for a waiver, others require really a substantive review of a lot of records. And there could potentially be a large number of these records, much greater than the number of waiver requests that the current working group for the fee waivers goes over. And so I'm not sure that's ideal for that reason. Another reason is that our efforts to streamline this process, including the elimination of paper checks, as we've talking about, is to shorten the amount of time between the end of the renewal cycle, the deadline, and the date that the suspension or fees are applied. And including board members in that analysis may lengthen that time rather than shorten it. And finally, the waiver process includes both waivers and of the fees that are applied before the fees are applied, as well as after the fees are applied. Somebody may only come to us after the fee is applied and say, hey, I need this waiver. And as a result, these decisions don't present all at once, and therefore we would end up with serial meetings with the board in order to try to accomplish this goal. And I'm not sure that's effective either. I will point out that the count of waivers associated with the attorney annual renewal was included in the item, but that, along with as is the number for the Law Corp and LLP. Both of those, all of those, are really a snapshot in time, and in fact have already changed from the information in the board agenda item. Hasn't increased significantly, but there have been some changes, and I can go over those if anyone's interested. So again, the proposed rule change is a return from public comment, and staff request adoption.
Thank you. Any questions? Or a motion, which is now being displayed.
I'll second Patty then, if she, or I can move it and you can second, either way.
We can Rochambeau. Why don't you move it and I'll second.
So moved.
So moved by Trustee Gore, seconded by Trustee Barahona. Roll call vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura?
Aye.
Good, not present. Gore?
Aye.
Not, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gore. I'm sorry. I was confusing you with Grande. Grande not present. Harrison?
Aye.
Huser not present. Jargello?
Aye.
Sowell not present. Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
And Cisneros.
Aye.
With 8 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thanks, everyone. Next is the proposed new rules and amendments to the State Bar rules regarding lawyer referral services, Title III, Division 5, Chapter 3. Request for approval and submission to the California Supreme Court. Joining us is Elizabeth Holm.
Bless you.
And Kathy Anguri.
And Kathy.
Good afternoon. Let me just get into PowerPoint, slide mode. Okay, how's that view?
Looks good.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us today. We are here to talk about the lawyer referral services rules. The State Bar does regulate lawyer services, referral services, to protect the public and to ensure access to legal services. Now, the proposed amendments the updates to the proposed amendments, implement statutory changes, and they really modernize the LRS framework. The Board of Trustees previously authorized circulation of the rules for 2 public comments, and this is now coming back from the second public comment. And so what we're seeking now is adoption of the proposed amendments and submission of the amendments to the California Supreme Court. So just in terms of the public comments from this second time, there were 7 comments received. 6 of them were substantive, and 1 of them was non-responsive to the proposal. They were submitted by attorneys, attorney organizations, non-attorneys, and individuals who declined to state affiliation. Of those 6 comments, 1 agreed with the proposal, 3 agreed only if modified, 2 disagreed. So now I'll turn it over to Elizabeth to talk a little bit about what the comments, the theme of the comments.
Thanks, Kathy. There were 5 general themes identified in the comments. First, there was a question about the definition and scope of referral activity. Second, there were concerns regarding private enforcement under Business and Professions Code Section 6156.5. Third, there were differing views on nonprofit participation, with the attorney organization emphasizing access to justice benefits and 1 commenter raising public protection concerns. Fourth, there was a request related to emergency or disaster response flexibility. And 5th, there were operational questions regarding implementation, audits, and program structure. These comments helped confirm where stakeholders would benefit from additional clarity, even where a formal rule change might not be necessary. So after review, staff does not recommend any additional revisions. We believe that the proposed rules remain consistent with the governing statute and legislative intent, and that further guidance on operational implementation could be provided in a policy manual or other guidance for lawyer referral services. As such, we don't recommend any additional revisions and recommend approval of the proposed new rules. And then direction to staff to submit the proposed new rules to the Supreme Court.
Great, thank you. Trustees, any questions for Kathy or Elizabeth on this item? And we probably have a motion. Happy to hear a motion in a second. Moved by Trustee Gore. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Stevens. Roll call vote, please.
Barahona?
Aye.
Buenaventura? Aye. Good not present, Gore?
Aye.
Grande not present, Harrison?
Aye.
User not present, Jargello?
Aye.
Soel not present, Stevens?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Cisneros?
Aye.
With 8 ayes and 0 nays, the motion passes.
Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you for your help. And with that, thanks to all the trustees, and we have concluded our agenda, and we will end this meeting of the California State Bar Board of Trustees. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Very good. Thank you. Good meeting.